Welcome to the first Africa-Colorado Summit. We're so delighted that everyone could make it tonight. As we said, this is an experiment of sorts. It's our effort to bring together the community that's really interested in Africa, to get to know each other, to network a little bit, to have a good dinner. The way that this is going to work is we're going to start with a few remarks from the podium to get us revved up and thinking about possibilities and opportunities for engaging with Africa. At that point, at about 6:30 or so, we're going to move to table discussions, which it looks like every table has already begun. So congratulations on being ahead of the agenda. First of all, I would like to ask George Bamu to welcome us from Africa Agenda. George.
How's everybody doing today? I'm excited. Are you? First of all, I want to start by thanking all our invited guests and thanking you all for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to be with us today. This is a really unique occasion. We've never had an event this big, this exciting. So I wanted to make sure that we thank you all for coming out. The U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit, which was organized in Washington, D.C. by President Obama, it was a fabulous, somebody called it a seminal event, and we've never had that before, unprecedented. 50 African heads of states and government coming all together in Washington, D.C. to talk about the development of the African continent. This organization, the Africa Agenda, that's what we're about. Africa Agenda promotes positive African news. That's what our mission is about. We have some information about the organization which you have on your tables. You can take a moment to look at that. It's about leadership, it's about governance, about issues of women and children. It's about issues of trade and investment. That is what this organization, Africa Agenda, represents. We're a news portal as well. We organize events. We want to put all that beautiful information, if you will, on our website so the whole world can access it. And we're housed right here at the Posner Center. I'm going to keep my remarks really short because we don't have a lot of time, but I'm really grateful for this opportunity. I want to thank you all for coming. We're going to have a fabulous discussion on the different tables. And one thing that I want to mention is that we're going to have, there'll be people reporting on what will be discussed at each table, and with your permission, a lot of that reports, we'll find ways to get it on our website as content, as information that people can access. So I thank you all for coming, and I believe we're going to have a really beautiful occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming. I'm Doug Vilsack, the Executive Director of the Posner Center. I actually didn't expect to be here tonight because my wife is due with our first child on Saturday. So soon to be a new father, which I'm pretty excited about. In relevance to this event, the baby has already been to Africa, to Namibia and Zambia. I started working in Namibia in 2004, and that was really a transformative experience for me. I came out, went to law school, and have found myself here after setting up a number of organizations to distribute small-scale solar products in Namibia and Zambia. And so now we've built this amazing facility, and we have over 54 tenants focusing on developing solutions to global poverty around the world, and one of our main focuses is Africa. So almost every African country we have an organization that's working there, or kind of reaching out to folks that are working in those countries, really trying to develop solutions to the greatest challenges in these areas. So as a start, I would say welcome tonight, but I would hope to say welcome many more times to this community and to all these great folks working in Africa and from Africa, and just invite you to come back and again and again. We have so many events here and really so many organizations that you can be involved in. And I think the goal of this place is to really, for this to be the hub of all of this work, all of these international connections here in Colorado, and especially the hub of real solutions that we can develop and work around the world with our partners around the world. I would say about the African Leaders Summit, I was there in DC this year. And having spent a lot of time in Africa, this was one of the first times that I've ever actually seen the government here in the U.S. Engaged on this level with countries and with leaders and with the challenges that we face in those countries. And it was pretty stunning to see all of these people and all of these leaders in the United States actually thinking about Africa, sometimes really for the first time. My hope is really that we can continue that effort and not just have this be a one-time event. And I think this event here tonight and trying to keep that ball rolling here in Colorado is a great step in that direction. So I think hopefully we can keep pushing all these ideas forward and come up with solutions and work with the organizations here that are already working around the world to take those to Africa and to bring a lot of the great ideas and solutions that are developed in Africa back here to the United States because we have a lot to learn as well.
Well, I'm talking amongst friends tonight, which feels so good because every time I talk about Africa, I feel like I'm always explaining and helping people to understand why Africa is so important. And Africa is not a country, it's a continent. And so it is, there's a lot of speakers tonight, so I won't take much time, but I am deeply passionate about the continent, so much so that as a city councilman, I'm there every 6 months. How many people in this room have been to the continent in the last 6 months? Raise your hand. Raise them in the air. Raise them like you just don't care. Say, oh yeah, oh yeah. Okay. So this is how I became passionate about the continent. My mother was actually pregnant with me in Tanzania. When she went there with the rest of my family, and there's something that happens when you are in your mom's womb and she is passionate about, you know what I'm talking about, Doug. You got an African baby coming, and they actually thought I was a girl, and they were going to name me Azania after Tanzania. So, and then we also went to my mom also went to Kenya. And so just a crazy kind of history. Fast forward to me being a nonprofit leader in the city and county of Denver and helping start an orphanage in Kenya called Tumaini, which means hope. And so very passionate about Kenya, been a ton, and when I was elected into city council, I was so excited to find out that Nairobi and Denver were sister cities. And so we started taking business leaders, we started taking manual high school students, we started taking nonprofit leaders on over to Kenya to reignite this relationship that we have with that country. This is just the beginning. And I'm an urbanist through and through. I'm a city builder. I don't work with the federal government. So these remarks are going to get me in trouble. But we don't wait for the federal government to work on trade, to work on relationships. We are cities. We work on trade together. And so Nairobi and Denver, we have been doing business for a long time. And matter of fact, level 3, we took level 3, the CFO for level 3, Senate Patel, over to Nairobi, and now they're investing hundreds of millions of dollars of fiber optics all throughout East Africa. And it wasn't because, I love our president and I love the federal government, but it wasn't because they initiated something. It's because we had an idea that it's important to connect with East Africa. There's more connections in this room than you can even imagine. And so I guess tonight, I would just encourage us to continue to foster these ideas, keep dreaming, keep pushing it, because it's working. This is really exciting. I just want you guys to keep the energy up, keep talking about this, keep the ideas coming, and keep taking risks because Africa is important and we need to be connected to it. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Joseph Odhiambo, and I am actually chair of the Nairobi Committee of the Sister Cities. The reason I've been asked to talk tonight is because I was in DC for the summit, and I went there because at the invitation of the Kenyan Embassy in DC. I'm not so much of a storyteller, but I believe that's my brief tonight here to kind of give an indication of what I saw in DC. I was privileged to attend 3 meetings in DC. I camped there for 4 days. And one of the meetings that I attended was the meeting organized by the Corporate Council on Africa, and it was a dinner hosted for President Uhuru Kenyatta. And what I saw there were very aggressive business people. I remember the sharp shoulders of the venture capitalists. You know, they were trying to make deals here. I remember also meeting people who are in business with Kenyan, you know, the Kenyan people. But I think the coolest moment was really when the Corporate Council on Africa surprised President Uhuru Kenyatta with a present. And what the present was a portrait, a picture of President Kenyatta when he was 2 years old and sitting on his mother's lap. It was an emotional moment for him as well. But also, I remember what the Corporate Council on Africa told him. And in the group, there was one guy who had been a friend of President Uhuru Kenyatta's father, the first president of Kenya. And after giving that portrait, what they said is, okay, President Kenyatta, American enterprise is ready to move to Africa. You need to meet the promises that you made. My point here tonight is because I know that, you know, there are diaspora Kenyans here and diaspora Africans who are actually interested in working together with the business leaders in the US. My point of encouragement is to tell you that you actually have power. You have a say in developing policies, economic, business policies, you know, in those countries, in your home countries. Well, at this point, I'm reminded of, a book by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She's a Nigerian writer. Have you read? Anybody else has read that book? Yeah, and my epiphany on that is, well, I look at me as a diaspora Kenyan, and in the eyes of my family, I've really transitioned. I mean, my lifestyle, my way of thinking, you know, having moved, they look at me and say, wow, this guy, he moved away decades ago and he is different. And then the other side is, with my American, you know, workplaces and my interactions with Americans, it's, that is that African guy with a heavy accent. And so, you know, my point here, my comeback here is the fact that I think we are a hybrid. And there's an encouragement to, you know, diaspora Africans here. We are a hybrid that know, you know, the two worlds. So how can we leverage what we have as a strength to actually work with, you know, American enterprise, you know, opinion leaders, to actually try and move business, you know, out there. America's strongest point is the fact that we remember when manufacturing jobs left and went out there, what really kept us was the American innovation. You know, we are inventors. And how can we leverage this to actually help Africa and also help ourselves? So that is really my point tonight. And in conclusion, I'll just say, I'm so happy that I'm not seeing venture capitalists with the sharp elbows tonight here. I am seeing people who are passionate to really have a sanitized discussion, you know, about what can be done. And I believe that from a discussion tonight, we should be able to move forward and hopefully get these heads of states to a great state of Colorado, so that we can also have a piece of what others get when they invite these presidents here. And that concludes my observation, my speech, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Abdul Sise. I am the International Business Development Rep for the Denver Office of Economic Development. And I am here to speak on behalf of the Mayor of Denver, the Honorable Michael Hancock. This event brought by Africa Agenda and World Denver Youth is a significant event in Denver. Because if we come to think about it, At the end of the day, as John Maynard Keynes himself observed, it's ideas that matter, not vested interests. What is going on in Africa, and frankly, in a lot of places, we tend to give up the battle of ideas and surrender to vested interests. But if we keep pushing our ideas forward, we keep debating like we are going to be doing here tonight, we keep discussing and make sure our ideas are continually refreshed and replenished, then for good or for evil, ideas triumph at the end of the day. And leaving you with the words of the great African leader from a West African country, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, when he said, political independence without economic independence is no independence at all.
I would like to thank the organizers for having me here. Luca Pawanga, a professor at Regis University in the School of Management. So if you want quality education, come to Regis University, and that's for Professor Pawanga. And I'm also the host of Energy Africa Conference. Now, I had the privilege of being in Washington during the US Africa Leadership Summit. In fact, I can characterize that summit as not a leadership summit, but really a business summit with the leaders coming on board. Because if you look at the people who participated there, you look at the Dangotes, the millionaires in Africa, the Mo Ibrahims, the Dangotes, the Elumelus. You come here, everyone who's who, the CEOs of GE, Walmart, and so on, all of them were there, and they were the ones who were leading most of these conversations. Now, one of the things that I wanted to take away from there was sometimes we get caught up in the euphoria of the event instead of trying to think ahead. Because that's one of the questions I had for most of the leaders or some of the people that I was interacting with. Just like somebody else who was here, I was come to there for the whole 6-7 days. I went there a couple of days earlier and I left a couple of days later because there were other events that I was participating in. So the question was, what happens after this? And many people were not able to tell me, well, I'm here, I will see what happens. Which means there wasn't much of a plan as to the aftermath of that event. And I had the privilege of being invited by the Department of Commerce and the Department of State, where we had a conversation with Linda Greenfield and some other people there about what next? What is it that is going to be done? Obviously, there were a lot of developments where the whole place was buzzing with businesses from Africa. I've never seen a collection of, it sounds like art here, but a collection of so many fine businesses come to the US at the same time. You'll go out, you'll see all these Africans in long limos and so on. But the gist of the matter is, what was next? And that's the question that I'm so happy that we are all here discussing this, because we had discussions around this as well. Now, one of the things I would like to see come out of here is really to make a decision. How do we leverage what we already have now to the future? One of the things we know in terms of Africa, one of the problems is it suffers from an information gap. A lot of people, when you talk to them, they don't know much about Africa. And this is why even my conference, it was almost derailed by Ebola. So the thing here is, given the fact that there is an information gap, how do we close that gap? Because businesses, when they make investments, they don't just look at the project, they also want to know who is involved. If they are not familiar with that person or that firm, they're not going to invest, because it increases their risk. The less they know, the higher the risk. And so we have to make sure that at least in our small way, we highlight, we shine a torch on Africa. That's the reason why we formed the Energy Africa Conference. It's because we wanted to make sure we highlight the business opportunities that are inherent in Africa and how you can actually do real business with Africa, rather than thinking that Africa, when you go there, you just think of famine, you think of all these bad things. Those bad things, yes, they do happen, but there are also good things that are happening in Africa, and I would like to see more people involved in that. And of course, I'm preaching to a choir here, but the thing is, I'm happy to be here and looking forward to the deliberations. I know I'm the only person standing in between you and the deliberations. So let's get it going. Thank you so much.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here. I think the two speakers who have spoken before me talked about getting you guys ready and thinking about how to do business in Africa. I think there is a junction, and the junction is Afrique Mall. And so North Star bought the property in Aurora, hopefully our first, and maybe 5 in the next 10 years. And this will become the first African cultural business and educational center. Now, if you came to Afrique Mall, let's say February 2014, this is what you would see. I just paint a very brief picture for you to see what Afrique Mall is all about. On our first floor, we have a 26,000 square feet space. Currently, almost all rented out, but one retail space. Thank you. On that level, there are over 20 businesses. Most of these, about 60%, are startups. 6 African restaurants from 7 different African countries. And most importantly, on our first floor, a cultural center space where we envision children from elementary, high school, middle school coming in to learn about Africa, so that, to Dr. Lucas' point, we sort of help bridge that educational gap between Africans and those of us in the Western world. Not to say that even those of us in the diaspora, we still have some things to learn about Africa. I'm from Ghana, by the way, but that doesn't mean I know everything about Africa. I don't know much about Kenya. I don't know much about any of the South African countries. So we ourselves have a lot to learn in that space. So I would say, before you go to Africa to do business, to invest, stop at Afrique Mall, invest with us a little bit, and then see how it works, how Africans, we can make things happen for us and for our investors. Thank you so much for giving me a few minutes.